Welcome to WitchLit, a place to talk about the craft of writing and writing the craft. I'm your host, Victoria Raschke, author, publisher, witch, and nosy Scorpio. WitchLit is brought to you by Thousand Volt Press, a family-owned independent publisher established to produce the books we want to see in the world. All our titles can be purchased directly from thousandvoltpress.com or wherever you buy books. If you'd like to support WitchLit, please consider buying us a coffee at ko-fi.com/witchlitpodcast. Dawn Aurora Hunt, often called Dawn the Kitchen Witch, is an author, entrepreneur, cook, and pagan. Combining her love of cooking with simple spells, she brings her own brand of kitchen witchery and magic meals into her books, recipes, and classes. Dawn is the host of the Conversational Witchcraft podcast. She is the proprietor of Cucina Aurora, a line of oils, sauces, mixes, coffee, and more, and is the author of 3 books, Taste from the Temple, A Kitchen Witch's Guide to Recipes for Love and Romance, and Kitchen Witchcraft for Beginners. Dawn Aurora Hunt, welcome to WitchLit.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm such a fan.
Aw, I'm excited to have you on. I, too, am a fan, so we can have a mutual appreciation society.
Thanks. I feel like you're one of those people that I follow online and I fangirl over your podcast. And then this is one of those good things that the internet does is it brings people together. We haven't actually met in person, but hello.
I know.
We can be friends anyway because of the interwebs.
That's right. It's beautiful.
Well, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming on. And as you know, our first question for everybody on the show is, and maybe this is different when you're writing cookbooks about magic. In this age of the internet and social media and visual media, so why still write? Why still write books?
Why still write? So I don't know. I don't think of myself as a writer. Sometimes I joke with my partner, and he'll say something, and he'll be like, "You're a writer," and I'm like, "Am I?" I guess I am. I have the published works to prove it, but I don't think of myself that way. Mm-hmm. When I sit down to write, it doesn't feel like part of my identity. It feels like something that is part of my spiritual work or part of my personal development. And for anyone, because you write, writing is a process of digging really deep within yourself and finding the words to express what you're feeling and thinking on the page. It is not different, in my opinion. Most of the books that I write are culinary in nature, right? They're mm-hmm. kitchen witchcraft books.
Yeah.
They're not just cookbooks. They're not just witchcraft books. Cooking food and kitchen witchcraft is very personal to me. So it doesn't feel like I'm writing. It feels like I'm having a conversation with you about my spiritual self and my journey into learning about my spiritual self. And why do I keep doing it is I keep changing. My practice keeps changing. What I learn keeps changing. What I learn about myself and witchcraft and food and the way my body and soul want to have food, work with food, talk about food, it keeps evolving. I am not the same person, and certainly not the same kitchen witch that I was 20 years ago when I started, 10 years ago when I wrote my first Taste from the Temple. So I have to keep doing it. Whether or not people are reading it or consuming it is a different story. But this is going to sound so terrible. It's not for them. It's for me. The work is inside of me. The sharing is inside of me. And it needs to come out. So, yeah, that's why I have to keep doing it. Does that make sense? Does that sound terrible?
No, I was thinking, no, I don't think it's terrible. And I do think a lot of writers write for themselves first. You almost have to.
Yeah. And often, especially in the case of my book, Kitchen Witchcraft for Beginners, I got the opportunity, that opportunity came to me. I was not looking for, I was working on my own other projects, and this publishing house was like, hey, we want to do this book. We heard you're the person to write this book. And if you don't want to do it, we'll have to find someone else. And I was like, oh, fuck no. I'm not putting that responsibility. That's my responsibility. Like, I felt the responsibility to share what I've learned because I didn't want somebody else to do that. So I also, yes, is it for me? Sure, it is definitely for me, but it's also because of my sense of responsibility to the witchcraft community and also to the non-witchcraft community. I want people coming into this community or learning for the first time. Kitchen witchcraft is so accessible. It's like herbalism. It's a gateway drug into paganism, into witchcraft, into homesteading, into all these things that we love that are really seeing a resurgence right now. It doesn't feel right to not share what I've learned. I feel very responsible.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I like that idea that there's like a duty behind it too, which makes sense.
Yeah.
So obviously writing came later. So what came first, witchcraft or cooking?
Cooking, absolutely. So I was born and raised in a very traditional Italian Catholic family. For those of you who can hear it in my voice, I'm originally from New York. When I get excited, aggravated, or drunk, my New York comes out. So that is a true statement. And so food, the way in which food was created, the way in which it's held in reverence, the way in which family, relatives came together is very ritualized. In most families, in most cultures, it doesn't matter. I mean, you're in the South, right? There's ritual around barbecue. There's ritual around, certain types of foods, how they're created and why. And that was true for me growing up, for sure. Somewhere in my late teens is when I found the path of witchcraft. And then as I traveled that path of witchcraft in my early 20s, I found some books on kitchen witchcraft. Actually, the first one that I found was called Kitchen Witchery by Patricia Telesco. It was my very first kitchen witch book. And I remember at the time, I had just started dating my husband, and he was working at a bookstore, and I went there to pick him up, and I found this book on the shelf. And while I was waiting for him to get off work, I was flipping through this book, and I went, holy crap, this is me. I didn't know there was a word. I didn't know there was a kind of this subsection of witchcraft that was rooted in and steeped in food and the rituals around food and why food and why preparation of things. And I was like, holy crap, this is me. And then I realized that, all the things that my little old Italian grandmother taught me were all folk magic. She would never say that, but it was all folk magic, Italian folk magic. So yeah, food definitely came first. I mean, and who doesn't love to eat? So yeah, that's how it happened. And then through my journey, I've seen the development and the changing of my craft and my spiritual practice and my tastes in food. And a few years after that, my late 20s, I found out that I have celiac disease. So I can't eat gluten. I can't eat wheat. I can't eat a lot of things. There were other things that were going on with my health as well. So it was another time I had to kind of like recalibrate around food. And now it was, how do I recalibrate my diet, how I feel about food, how I work with food. And then, oh my goodness, I'm a kitchen witch. How is this going to change my spiritual practice? Now that these foods that I once was working with magically, I can no longer have. how do I continue to work with those things? And can I replace them? Are there other things that have those same energies? And I'm kind of going through that same situation now because I have developed a bunch of other issues around food and autoimmune stuff. So that's changing again, where as we're having this conversation, I'm in a moment in time where I'm again recalibrating my relationship with food, my relationship with kitchen witchcraft, how it works. But now I feel like, 25 years in, I have the skills and the understanding of the magical practices to easily pivot.
Yeah.
But food first, for sure.
Yeah. I feel like the universe, having an Italian ancestry person have celiac disease is kind of cruel a little bit.
And what's really funny is that celiac disease is incredibly common in Italian people. And especially Italian American people, because of the way that wheat is raised and modified in our country, but also how it is dried, how pasta is dried in America versus how it is in Italy. So I'm not going to get into that science, and I'm not going to get up on that soapbox.
But it's fascinating. Yeah. I mean, I know a little bit about it, and it is really fascinating. Like the changes in wheat agriculture and processing, and why so many people, even if they don't have celiac, have a hard time with wheat. I mean, I kind of stopped eating pasta because I always felt like crap after we would have meals. And then I switched to buying like a made in Italy imported pasta. And I don't have those problems anymore.
Yep.
Even though it's probably made with American wheat, weirdly, because they import so much wheat from the US. But
it may be, but it's also about the drying time on the dry pasta, because when in America, and this is not 100% for everybody, okay? Like I'm not don't write me emails that I'm wrong, okay? Take everything I say, with a most of, or, but in America, we go fast and hot to dry our pasta, right? And that's why it tends to be like a brighter goldy color. And in Italy, it's slow and not super hot, right? So they just hang it in a window to dry, or they just hang it in a room to dry. So it's regular, like, warm room temperature, 75 degrees, 80 degrees. They're not heating it to dry it fast, right? They're not putting it under a blow dryer. And so it will take 36 hours, 48 hours for it to dry. And that reacts with those gluten proteins. And they're not getting shocked by the heat. Those proteins are not acting the same based on how they're heated and dried. And so that's easier to digest for people that just have a regular sensitivity. It's like the difference in bread, right? Yeah. If you're getting fresh milled, fresh grain that is hasn't been messed with, and you're milling that and you're making your own sourdough bread versus I'm buying a loaf of bleached white bread from the supermarket. Yeah. They're completely processed differently, and our guts know the difference. But I would like to spin that back to kitchen witchcraft. Our spirit knows the difference. Yeah. Right? Our energetic bodies know the difference, as well as our gut. And oftentimes we do not connect those things. Right? So for me personally, as a kitchen witch who has all these digestive issues, I'm constantly being forced to make those connections between body and spirit, and food and spirit and body, and how those things all work together. And it's a pain in the ass, but it's also a gift.
Yeah. Yeah. It just made me think, when I was in culinary school, one of my chefs was like, it is called culinary arts degree, but he said, I'm here to tell you it's also science, and it's also about who you are as a person, as a chef. And I was like, oh, it was just kind of, I mean, I think I knew that intuitively, but to have someone say it in this kind of academic setting was really interesting. That, clearly was also something he thought a lot about too. So it was really eye-opening moment for me.
Yeah, biology plays a lot of part of that. And, there's so much stigma around, oh, are you sure you have a gluten allergy? Are you sure? Oh, come on, it's just bad. There are some people that choose a gluten-free diet, And there are some people like me that have no choice.
Right.
I will get sick if I have too much. And that's how I found out about my celiac is there were months and months and months where I was so sick. I would be, without getting into all the details, I would be like passed out on the bathroom floor from being sick.
Yeah.
And not being able to go to work and all of that because my body, I was feeding my body what it didn't want, that was killing it from the inside. It's not like, oh, if I just don't want to eat bread. Like I'm fat anyway. So like it doesn't, it's not about,
it's not about the bread.
Not about the carbs.
Yeah.
It's literally my body cannot tolerate this. And I think you have to respect that. People's bodies, we're realizing, need different things, and again, bring back to the energetic quality of things.
Yeah.
Both physically and spiritually, our bodies want or don't want, our spirits want or don't want. And being mindful of that is so important for ourselves, and being respectful of it is so important for how we relate to other people.
Yeah. Well, and I had not intended for us to have a whole philosophical conversation for the podcast, but I'm not surprised that's where it's going. But I was just thinking about learning to cook, and how for a lot of people that is something that doesn't happen for them anymore. Like their parents don't cook, they don't come from a family that cooks. And, learning that, having someone give you the gift of that, adult teach you as a child, or learning when you're older, like it's such a way to kind of take control of your world. And it's, I think it's such a small thing because a lot of people don't think about food in that way. It's fuel, or it's just like something they have to do, or they can't get enough of it. So it's there's also contention around it and all of that. So I think it's, there's so many different ways this could go, but I do feel like taking that power back for yourself of cooking, whether you have health problems or not, is kind of a way to have a little, even if you're not a witch, it's just a way to have a little more control over your world.
I agree with that 150%. And it kind of breaks my heart when people are like, oh, I don't cook. I'm like, what do you mean you don't cook? What do you mean you don't cook? And because that's, first of all, that's not true. That's not true. Yeah. There is nobody that doesn't at least make like a box of macaroni and cheese, or putting something in the microwave, even if it's a pre-packed, pre-made meal. You are still doing the act of heating it up, putting it on a plate for yourself. And you can take, like you said, that control back, but you can take that into a spiritual place and do it mindfully. If you can be, while your macaroni and cheese or your Stouffer's lasagna is in the microwave, you can still be sitting there doing a gratitude meditation. You can you're still going to pour yourself a drink, or maybe you're going to like throw together a salad that came in a bag. You're not going to eat it out of the bag and just dump it into your face. You're literally going to put it in a bowl. You're going to put the dressing on it, right? So maybe you're not doing traditional cooking, right? Maybe you're just going to make scrambled eggs for breakfast, or a hard-boiled egg for breakfast. These are still things that you are doing to nourish your body. And if you're doing those things mindfully, they can also be there to nourish your spirit, your spiritual self as well. And that is something that's gotten lost. 100%. That's what's gotten lost. We have a friend who we were just talking about, my husband and I were talking about, and we were talking about how this person literally had cereal for breakfast, takeout for lunch, takeout for dinner, every meal. And I was like, first of all, it's fucking expensive. Okay.
Yeah.
Second of all, how do you feel? Not just how do you feel in your guts, like in your belly and in your physical health, but what kind of energy are you taking into your body if you're just eating fast food? If you're eating things that are not, that are so far removed from the earth, right? I feel my best physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, when the food that I'm consuming is obviously made with intention, but is as close to earth as possible,
Mm-hmm.
right? The freshest from the farmer's market if I can find it. The eggs from the lady who's raising her own hens down the road. Like, these are the things that have a higher vibration because they're closest to being in their life state.
Mm-hmm.
And they're holding their that life vibration energy, right? Now, I would like to have a caveat to that to say that can get expensive and that cannot be accessible to lots of folks.
Yeah.
So you're not doing something wrong if you can't do that, but try your hardest when you can, right? Try your hardest when you can.
Well, and
if
I think you can
choose.
still, yeah, you can still be intentional about the things that you're doing. I think, I mean, I do think there are situations where intentionality kind of falls by the wayside when it's about survival, and that's different. And that's a whole different conversation. Yeah. And there are too many people in this country and around the world who have to deal with that. And that's a whole other conversation.
Yes.
But, I think we've lost the sense of, culturally, we've lost a sense of intentionality around food, and capturing that however you can is huge and will make a difference, I feel like, in your health and your well-being, even even if you're not a spiritual person, I think your body, you're right. I think your body knows.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it can be as simple as, again, I've had conversations with people who are, college students, and they're like, well, I can't cook because I don't have a space to cook and I live on ramen noodles. And I went, great, awesome. We can work with this, right? Go to the dollar store and see what kind of herbs and spices you can find at the dollar store, right? Okay, rosemary for healing, basil for, abundance. Maybe they have, toasted onions, and that's for banishing negativity.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of using your ramen spice packet, cook your ramen noodles on your little hot plate in your room and add these little spices and, toss them with a little water or a little bit of shredded cheese or whatever, and put that intention in, right? And know that you're doing something that is spiritual to feed your soul as well. So going, okay, I'm going to add this, and this, and this is for this, and this is for that. And that's the intention around this meal. And also come at it with gratitude, right? I'm super grateful for the factory that makes this ramen so that I can survive and I can get to class and I have food in my belly. Because let's be honest, like you said, there are way too many people that deal with food insecurity in our country and countries all over the world. So gratitude is a big deal. It's a big deal in my practice as a kitchen witch, for sure. I've been in that place.
Yeah.
I've been broke and been like, we're eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for weeks on end, and that's what we have to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get it. But I'm still grateful I have this peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I don't know, there's so many directions I want to go. It's hard for my brain to form. Oh, no. It's good. It's good. But I was thinking in when you kind of when you become a person who's known for cooking or become kind of immersed in the culinary world, professionally or on the outskirts of profession, I feel like sometimes your relationship with other people changes around food. One of the things that we discovered when I went to culinary school and I was teaching and running a catering business and working in hotels and all that good stuff that came with that life, that people wouldn't ask us to dinner in their home anymore.
Yes.
And it changed their relationship of how they thought about me, about food. And they would be like, well, I don't want to cook for a chef. And I was like, let me tell you a tiny secret. The best food a chef eats is food somebody else made.
Yeah. And let me just say this. I am not a chef. I am not a trained chef. I've never been to culinary school. I am a little Italian meatball who learned how to cook from her grandma. That is.
But you do have a business. I mean, you have a food business. You are a food professional.
I do have a food business, which is based in not only my spiritual path, but also the fact that when I started the company, it was right around the time that I found out I had celiac and I couldn't eat anything. So I started making these infused olive oils for myself. I was like, okay. And then as I progressed, I was like, well, I really want this item. I really want onion dip. and I can't eat MSG, and like Lipton onion soup mix, like the third ingredient or something is MSG. So I can't eat that. And there's wheat in there and there's gluten in there. And I was like, oh man, I would kill somebody for onion dip. And I went, screw it. I'm just going to make it myself. And I came up with a recipe, and then I put it in a package and I sold it. So like it's out of necessity for sure. But yeah, just to be clear, I'm not a chef, and people think that I am, but I am not a chef. I'm a kitchen witch, right? I'm a home cook, and I'm a good cook. I'm sure I don't hold a candle to you, but I'm a good cook.
It's been a long time since I've been in a professional kitchen.
and especially because I have figured out how to make really good food that is gluten-free, that is, you know, now I can't have dairy. So I'm working with dairy alternatives and trying to figure all that out. And I'm constantly experimenting with different brands of things and different kinds of this and that, and, you know, really finding the things that work the best, specifically like gluten-free pastas and things like that. And I'm looking at, you know, Italian imported stuff. And in any case, yes, no one wants to cook for me. And it's worse because people think that, you know, oh, well, I have to cook something for Dawn that's really impressive. And you know, right. I'm intimidated to cook for you because you're such a good cook. And also B, they're like, I have no idea how to cook anything decent that's gluten-free. And I'm like, Mexican food.
Yeah.
Corn tacos and grilled meats and vegetables, guacamole, I'm happy. Like, that's always safe. But yeah, it's funny because people they stress out. People really stress out about, okay. And then you'll get like 17 text messages like, okay, I bought this brand of gluten-free pasta. Is this okay? Can you have fruit? Yes, I can have fruit. You know, like, are you sure you can have spinach? Yes, I'm positive.
Sure I can have
Does it have wheat in it? No. My mother will be like, can you have eggs? And I'm like, again, I've been gluten and dairy intolerant for quite a while. And I'll get a phone call from her. I'm making eggs. Can you have eggs? Yes, I can have eggs. Well, are you sure? You said you can't have dairy. And I said, Ma, do eggs come from cows? Dairy milk comes from cows. And she's like, well, I don't know. You buy eggs in the dairy section.
Yes, exactly.
And I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God.
Yeah.
But it's because of the level of stress of trying to cook for someone who has all these limitations.
Yes.
Meanwhile, a couple days ago, we had some friends that moved into a new house, and they were like, we really want to have you guys come over. We want you to be our first guest, and we really want to cook for you because they come here for like every Thanksgiving, and you know, they're like, we want to cook for you because cooking is your love language, and we want to speak that language back to you. And you know, they were just so wonderful and made like this amazing. Again, we went Mexican, right? And they were like this garlic marinated beef, and like went through the trouble of finding a gluten-free, refined sugar-free, dairy-free chocolate cake recipe for me. And it was so delicious. And like, it was a simple, beautiful meal made with love.
Yeah.
And that's what I remember. Not that it was the best meal I've ever eaten in my life. Not that I was at this fancy ass restaurant. What I remember is people that love me went out of their way to do something nice for me in my love language.
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing, I think. You know, I mean, as a kitchen witch, everything for me is about intention. And the intention there was love and appreciation. And oh my goodness, did I feel it, you know?
Yep. Yes. Oh, yeah. It almost makes me want to cry. Because I miss,
really lovely.
Yeah. I mean, I miss like, you know, that my older generation is almost completely gone. And like the thing I think about is like their intentionality around meals and like making family meals and stuff like that. And I was thinking the other day, like and you brought up peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, like at a very low point in my life, I showed up at a friend's house and I was just distraught. And she put me out on her deck with a cup of tea and then brought me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich cut in triangles. And it was like the best meal, the most loved I had felt in weeks. And I was like,
Yes.
yeah, I mean, sometimes that's all it takes, you know?
Yes. Like, it's amazing how such simple things have so much power of healing, comforting, soothing. You know, I mean, there are times where we're having a bad day, and both my partner and I were both raised in Italian families, and his mom is Italian, so he grew up on Italian food as well. And there are times where we're just like, I need meatballs, like that, you know. Yeah. And if I'm being like really honest, I only make meatballs like 2 or 3 times a year because the right way is very labor intensive, and you're frying your meatballs and you want to have like a full day to cook. But there's so much comfort in that, you know. Or like, I just found recently, maybe you don't know what this is. Maybe your listeners don't know what this is, but I found gluten-free pastina. Do you know pastina? It's a teeny, teeny, tiny star-shaped pasta.
Oh, okay.
And it's really, really popular with Italian families, especially when you're sick or when you're a child, right? Like, I ate pastina. You make it, and it's always like, depends. You can make it with chicken broth, and you let the little tiny stars pasta cook in the chicken broth. But my mom used to make it with a little milk and butter. So it was like a warm milk broth, buttery, but not like a sauce. I can't express it. It was more like a soup than like a sauce.
Right.
And I would eat that as a child, coming home from school, coming home from kindergarten. When I was sick, I would have pastina. And obviously, you know, gluten-free, whatever. A couple months ago, I found gluten-free pastina in the store, and I about lost my effing mind. And I came home immediately and made this for myself. And I was like, it's like 3 ingredients. And it's the most comforting, brings you right back to this safe little cozy space within your heart, and that connectivity of heritage and food through this type of practice. Like, that's we can have a whole nother episode where we just talk about ancestral magic.
Yes. And how much of it is tied up in food. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, I have my grandmother's cast iron skillet. I mean, my mom's family is, you know, very Southern. And like, every time I cook with that pan, like, I feel them, like my mom and my grandmother, and that pan is like just imbued with them. And
every meal they made, every intention they put in that. And they're talking about cast iron, right? Which is a natural substance, the iron, the metal, right? So this is a super conductor of psychic activity, right? And magical activity. And it just stays in there.
Yeah.
Now, that's also not great if you had someone in your family and you have one of their things and they were kind of an asshole. But I have the same. I have these pans. They are muffin tins, and they are like hammered copper. And they came over from Italy with my great grandmother, because my grandmother was born in Italy and she crossed over to America when she was about 7. So of all the things that her mother took with her from Italy on a boat in steerage to come to America, some of the things she brought were tins and trays and things to cook with. Those are your children, your clothes, and your cooking utensils.
Yeah.
Those are the things that were the most important to you.
Yeah.
You know, because maybe you couldn't find them here. Maybe you needed to get off that boat and be able to cook for your 4 children, right? No matter where you landed. That blows my mind. And I'm grateful because I have those items from my heritage. So I didn't know my great grandmother, but I have a pan that she had that was also like what she would make pizzas in. Right? Like, the magic of that. Come on. Like, come on.
Where in Italy did your family come from?
So on my mother's side is from Naples and my father's side is Sicilian. That I know of.
Yeah.
We were kind of estranged from my dad's family growing up, so I don't know a lot about them. What I do know is most of that heritage is Sicilian, but my mother's mother was born in Naples.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like a lot of Italian American families that Naples Sicily connection is really strong. Like Southern Italy, a lot of Southern Italians.
Yep.
Yeah, my husband has Corsican ancestry, so like the weird where we speak Italian, but the French rule us kind of problem.
Yes,
so,
but the food must be delicious there.
Yes.
Right.
I have not gotten to go to Corsica. He's actually from Trinidad, and but Trinidad is such a melting pot. So he has this, and he's gone several places with his last name, and they always kind of do a little bit of a double take. This very tall black man with a very Italian Corsican last name.
I love it.
Yeah, but yeah, it's interesting stuff. The whole ancestry. I was thinking like my dad's family is Swedish and German, and our meatballs are Swedish meatballs, but yeah, it's an all-day thing. Those are not the ones from IKEA are not the same as my grandmother's Swedish meatball recipe.
Do you have a good Swedish meatball recipe in any of your cookbooks?
Do. Well, not in my cookbooks, but I have one. Yes.
So like I have this deeply held belief that I will never ever share my meatball recipe.
Mm-hmm.
So I have like on my website, I have a turkey meatball recipe. That's a simple, quick, like this is a 20-minute turkey meatball. Put it in my marinara sauce because I have my grandmother's recipe marinara sauce on my website, which is pretty new. It took me like 10 years to develop it. It's fucking outstanding. Like I shouldn't say that about myself, but it's really like I'm so proud of that sauce.
Yeah.
But like so I have this little like it's a quick, easy. You don't have a lot of time turkey meatball recipe, super easy. But like my grandmother's meatballs and brajol, have you ever had like brajol?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So like brajol, for people that don't know, it's like this thin beef. And then you kind of like my grandmother would pound it even thinner. And then you would stuff it full of garlic and herbs and a little Parmesan cheese. And then you would tie it up into a little roll, pan sear it, and then let that cook in your tomato sauce or gravy, because we're from New York. And so if it had meat in it, if it had brajol or sausage or meatballs, it's gravy. If it didn't have meat in it, it was sauce, marinara sauce. And depending on the kind of sauce, is it this kind, is it marinara, is it pomodoro, how are we, but I will never I don't think I'll ever give away. I don't think I'll ever put in a book my grandmother's meatball recipe, and I'll probably take it to my grave. Maybe when I die someday, there'll be like a little like, and I leave this recipe to somebody,
Yeah.
But I don't think that I'll ever share that because it's so sacred. It's so personal.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel. And if I like you enough to cook you meatballs, we're family forever.
Yeah.
Because I don't cook meatballs for everybody.
Yeah.
Like legit.
No, that totally makes sense. I yeah, it's my husband's grandmother is from Jamaica and made Jamaican black cake, which is, this Christmas. They make it like really like a month before Christmas, and then you kind of eat it all the way through Easter. You have this black cake, and he's got a whole thing about Christmas, and so I wanted to make Christmas special for him, and I wanted to make the black cake. So I had tried a recipe I found, and it was not black cake. It was basically like British Christmas cake. It wasn't really black cake. It
was like a rum cake.
Yeah, and so he asked his grandmother if he could have the recipe, and she was at the point where she couldn't really write it out herself, and so she dictated it to his mother, and then we got the recipe and we made it the first year, and he was like, something's wrong, it's not quite right. I'm like, okay, and so he asked his mother again, and she's like, oh, I forgot to tell you have to do this, and so okay, so the next year we did that, and they were better, but they still weren't quite right. And she was like, oh, I forgot to tell you. Then you have to do this. And so finally we hit it. Like the third or fourth year we made black cake, we hit it. And just the look on my husband's face, like the first bite of that cake was like, this is why I cook. Like it was just, and we make it all the time. We give it to people. I've shared the recipe with people.
Yeah.
You know, it's so much her love in this recipe and in this cake. And my husband works with a lot of people from the Caribbean, and he took them, you know, black cake at Christmas, and just the joy that people get from this thing that is so much a part of their childhood and so much a part of home.
Yes.
And I just have felt like really privileged and blessed to be able to make this recipe and share it with people. And but getting the actual recipe was a slog.
I often feel like in kitchen witchcraft, the ancestral part of it is something, you know, like I've taught classes on ancestral witchcraft in terms of food. And when you have a discussion in the class about people's traditions around food, one of the things that is so amazing to see as a facilitator of a discussion like that is how similar the feelings, the rituals, the traditions around whatever the food is. And the food could be completely different. It could be Jamaican black cake, or it could be octopus, you know, but the feeling, the tradition, the reverence around whatever that food is so similar. And people kind of understand each other when telling the stories about the food. And that's a whole nother level to why it's important to be mindful about the food you're cooking and the food you're eating and the food you're serving and how you're relating to food and others through these mindfulness and visualization practices of kitchen witchcraft. And also to really understand somebody and understand their culture and understand their traditions. You can really learn so much by the food that they eat and the food that they were raised on, because that's what was available to them. That's what Mother Earth was giving those people at that time of year from the earth. You know, the ideas of grocery stores and supermarkets and boxed foods and canned foods is very, very young. You know, that all started kind of after World War II. Before that, we were still farming and cooking and raising and bartering. And you'd have somebody on your block who was raising chickens and somebody else who was making cheese, and people would share. Yeah. You know, after World War II, that's when we got big box stores and these supermarkets where the families and the baby boom generation needed to be fed, and they needed to be fed cheap, and they needed stuff that was shelf stable. And that's when we see things going into cans, and we see chemicals going into food because they needed cheap and long lasting food. Feed all these children that were being born during the baby boom. So you have this sort of innovation, I'm going to use air quotes, innovation around the food industry. And now we're kind of coming down from the other side of that. And we're realizing that's not good for us, again, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically. But understanding a person's culture, understanding their traditions around food, see what it is they eat, hear their stories about what grows. We went to a friend's house. We have friends who are from Iran is how they pronounce it. And they were lovely enough to have us over their house. And again, they said, we want to cook for you. We want to cook our food for you. Because where can you find Iranian food? I'm here in New England. I'm in New Hampshire. There's no, restaurants making Iranian food. And so they were like, we want to have you here and share our food culture with you. And it was such a gift. And they made this incredible meal of this saffron infused chicken that just was incredible. And this rice that was all herbs and dill and and then this potato dish that I cannot even describe to you. And I did my best. I was like, I want to bring dessert. And I made a Persian love cake for them, which is all made of cardamom and rose water and lemon zest and pistachios. And they just were like, I can't believe you went out of your way. You didn't make us, you didn't bring us a bag of American Oreos. You went out of your way to research what is something that is of our part of the world. And again, the feeling of connectivity around this food, and the fact that my whole point was to show them respect and love for them and their culture, and the fact that they felt that was such a reward. It was so, so rewarding to be able to do that. And now I promised them that they've got to come here and I've got to cook Italian food for them. And they've requested tiramisu. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to have to real tiramisu,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Tiramisu, personal favorite. I actually made one recently. It's my daughter-in-law's also favorite. So I made one as her birthday cake.
Yes. So. Oh, so good. So good.
Yes. I have never I did in culinary school because we had made my own biscuits to go in it. But
I've not done that. I've not done that.
I did it once and I was like, I know why people buy these. That once was enough. That's why people joke about, well, you made it in culinary school. I said, yes, but no one actually does that.
No.
Yes, they make you do it in school, but you don't do it. Yeah, you don't do it out in the real world. So.
Right. There's a company called Char that is a gluten-free company. They make really great gluten-free products. And they are actually an Italian company, but the owner is German. So weird. And yeah, very, very weird. And they do like hazelnut cookies and stuff like that, but they make gluten-free ladyfingers.
Oh, wow.
That you literally cannot tell the difference, especially if you're going to make tiramisu.
Yeah.
And I always have like 2 boxes of them up in my cabinet just in case. You never know.
You know, emergency tiramisu is important.
Emergency tiramisu. You don't know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I know that we can continue to talk about food forever, but I also want to give you the opportunity to talk about what's coming up next, because though, dear listeners, we are recording in August, this will come out in December. And you will have a new thing that's going to be out right after we talk, right after this airs.
Absolutely will. Yeah. So the project that I've been working on for the last year has been, again, something that I've been trying to bring into fruition for a really long time. It's actually a Culinary Kitchen Witches Oracle Deck. And so it's very unique because each one of the cards represents a food ingredient or a food group. And so you can sit with this deck and you can get inspiration and guidance from, all food has an energetic quality, right? So oftentimes when we pull a card from an Oracle deck, the only actionable thing we can do is think about it or journal about it or meditate on it. With this deck, you could pull a card, let's say for tomatoes, and the message of tomato is about giving and receiving love. And then there is a suggestion of how to use tomatoes, right? And so maybe during that day you're going out or you're getting lunch out with a friend and you're getting a salad and you decide, oh, you know what? Let me put some tomatoes on my salad because now I can work with that energy because my card this morning said tomatoes, giving and receiving love, and this is going to be able to help me do that. So it really allows you to work practically with these food ingredients. There's also a PDF along with the deck when you purchase it that you can scan a QR code you could scan and go to a PDF that is only for people who purchase this deck. And it actually will have a recipe for every single one of these cards.
Oh, wow.
So it's really, really cool. It's very, very unique. It is due out March 18th, 2025. And at the time of this recording or at the time of this airing, you should be able to go and pre-order it. So you can go to cucinaaurora.com. That's my website. You can find me all over social media at Cucina Aurora. That's Cucina, capital Aurora. or you could just Google Dawn the Kitchen Witch and everything is going to be my face.
Yes. That's an easy way to find your website.
Yeah. Yeah. Very easy.
Awesome. Well, I am super excited about that. I will, as soon as that pre-order button is available, I will be pushing it.
Excited.
And I'll make sure that's in the show notes for folks if they want to do that as well.
Much. Thank you. Thank you.
I've seen a couple other like food tarot kind of combinations, but I really like this. So I'm excited about this.
Thank you. Thank you. I've seen a couple of Kitchen Witch decks before, and they don't always encompass food. Mm-hmm. You know, that's why it's specific. It's culinary. Mm-hmm. It's really about working with the food and the energetic quality of that particular ingredient. You know, it's not necessarily like working around your kitchen. It's actually working through these foods. Mm-hmm. And you do not have to be a good cook to work with this. Yeah. You absolutely do not need to be.
You got to eat. You got to eat.
You got to eat.
You got to eat.
You got to eat.
So before we get to our last question, our little game of chance, what else do you have to plug? What else is going on with you that you want to let people know about?
So I have my own podcast, which you mentioned earlier, Conversational Witchcraft. And that's super fun because it's just like this, only reverse. I ask the questions. And I'm constantly evolving Cucina Aurora Kitchen Witchery, which is my gourmet foods business. Everything we make is infused with energetic qualities as well as, you know, all the herbal flavors and everything. It's all really high quality specialty foods that you can use in your everyday practices, right? So we make infused olive oils. I mentioned before, I have a line of marinara sauces out that are, I can't take too much credit, they're grandma's recipe. We've got dip mixes. We've got risottos. I make coffee. I do a whole line of witches brew coffee. They're aligned with the phases of the moon. So that could be your morning ritual. I think a lot of what I do through Cucina or Kitchen Witchery and through my books and through my podcast is kind of showing everyone kitchen witchcraft is a way to practice your spiritual stuff every single day, right? Mm-hmm. Like we all have crazy busy lives. We have children and jobs and partners and drama and friends that need us and parents and dry cleaning that has to go someplace or, you know, like, oh, my car broke down and I have to go get new tires. Like life is life and it's stressful. Mm-hmm. And so we don't always have time to sit in a deep meditation or work deeply with deities or ancestors or be, you know, dancing naked under every full moon. That's not reality for most modern witches and pagans. Mm-hmm. We make time every single day to eat, mm-hmm. and in many cases, feed others. So through my products, through my books, through my talks, through my workshops, it kind of, my hope is that people just realize, turn on the light switch of awareness, mm-hmm. mindfulness in the kitchen, mindfulness about food and what you're eating and nourishing your body, mind, and spirit. And that's where the magic happens. So everything I do is sort of to help you do that and practice and connect with spirit every single day through food.
I love it. I love it. And I'll have links for all that stuff too.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So our last question, as you know, is a little game of chance. My opportunity to be deeply Scorpio and ask people questions about stuff you're not supposed to talk about.
I am also a Scorpio. When is your birthday?
November 4th.
November 19th.
Woo! Yeah, I have an inordinate number of friends who are Scorpios.
I have very few Scorpio friends.
Oh.
All of my closest people, most of my closest people are Leos.
Interesting.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
Because I imagine myself with like, I'm a little scorpion and there's like this circle of lions around me. And I'm just keeping them all in line. It's like, nope, I'm going to sting you, you know? Yep. So let's do it.
Okay. So as you know, I'm going to roll a die and you'll get a question about death, sex, religion, politics, or money, depending on what I roll. And if you get a 6, you get to pick which one.
Oh, so. Please let it be sex.
Okay, let's see. Oh, death. Do you want to do this?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm in.
All right. So I was like Scorpios, right? We're all about this.
I'm in.
So I was thinking like, oh, what do I ask someone who loves to cook, loves food? So if you had the opportunity to plan your last meal, what are you going to eat?
Oh, this is a really funny question because if I knew it was my last meal and I knew I was going to die in like an hour, right? Literally all the bread. I have said to Justin, my partner, my husband, I have said to him, when the zombie apocalypse comes, I will be locking myself in the nearest Panera and I will just eat until I die. Because it takes about an hour to 2 hours for the effects of that to ravage my body.
Mm-hmm.
So if I knew I was going to die, if it was 4 p.m. and I knew I was going to die at 5:02, that's what I would do for the last hour because then I wouldn't feel sick.
Yeah.
I would just die
you just get
happy,
to enjoy
full of in a carb overload. It would be like squishy ciabatta bread and like a real New York bagel, which I miss so much. And now I can't have cheese either. So it would be bread and cheese, all the cheese. It would be like mozzarella cheese and crostini with fresh tomatoes and pasta with cream sauce and pumpernickel bread, like toasted pumpernickel with butter, just all the butter. oh, that's what I would eat. And I love that question. And thank you for asking me.
Oh, I love it.
Great question.
Well, and I think it hadn't even occurred to me because I didn't know when I wrote the question that you had celiac, and I was like, oh, that really changes. That really changes this question a lot.
Correct. Like if I was on death row and they were like, what do you want your last meal to be? I'll be like, okay, it has to be right before. And this is what, and I would just,
I don't want to die feeling like I need to throw up my guts.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Because no one needs that. And it's terrible. Like I get so legit, like really, really sick from gluten, really, really sick from dairy. So, but it takes about 2 hours, maybe an hour to hit my system. So now I'm just going to fantasize about eating baguettes. I'm just going to rub them all over my face and
just lay on a bed of baguettes.
Lay. Like, remember that scene from Indecent Proposal when she's rolling around on the money? That's going to be me, but like I'm going to be rolling on rolls. I'd have some brioche. Oh God, a croissant. I would die. I would die.
Yeah.
That would,
I love it.
And now I'm starving. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, I was thinking, so I have an intolerance to bananas, which I often have to explain to people as an allergy because they don't understand the intolerance. But the intolerance is not, oh, I feel a little bad. It's I want to die if I eat bananas. Raw bananas. I can eat cooked bananas.
Isn't that weird?
It's real weird. It's actually like a sugar ester in the bananas that's broken down by heat. That's why I can eat them cooked. But that's a really complicated thing to say to people. And so they're like, oh, bananas. And I'm like, yeah. And it is horrific, as you know, when you eat something that your body just fundamentally rejects. So,
and it's not just physical. Like with a lot of people I know with celiac, your issues aren't just physical. You get like this brain fog, you get confusion, and it'll take days. So initially you'll have the physical, like, oh my God, I want to die symptoms. But then 3 or 4 days later, you're still like, why can't I focus? How come I can't read a book? Like, what's my cat's name? Like you literally, it's really, really bad. It affects everything in your system. So,
well, and not to go off on another tangent right before we wrap up, but I feel like just because we've talked about it, like one of the things I want to share with people, because my experience of it has been really negative, and a lot of people I know who have intolerances and food allergies have had this experience, that something is wrong with your body, but when you go to tell a medical professional, they're like, well, that's not really a thing. And I'm like, I'm telling you, this is what's happening. And then when you finally find someone who believes you and they validate everything you've said, it's like the heavens have opened and cherubs sing, because you're like, yes, thank you for understanding that this is a thing.
Literally, when I found out I had celiac, I was 29 years old. And I have been sick for months. As I told you, I was like growing up on the side of the road, like sleeping on the bathroom floor. Like my husband would have to pick me up and carry me into bed. And I was like, I'm a big girl. You can't see me, but I am a fat girl. And I use that word with love. I'm taking it back. Fat is not ugly. Okay. And I've always been this size my whole life. Right. I got very thin when I got really, really sick. When I found out about my allergies and drastically changed my diet, I got super, super thin. And then, immediately my body regulated, and this is just where she wants to be. And I love her and she's beautiful and that's how she is. And that's great.
Yeah.
But the doctors were telling me the first thing, you're fat, just lose weight. And I'm like, I am telling you, I was at the time I was 29. I was like, I'm 29 years old and I wake up every morning and I feel like I'm going to die. This has nothing to do with my weight. I've been the same weight since I was 15. I am sick. No, you're not sick. Well, we're going to do this test and we're going to do that test and we're going to do this. And no, here, take some Prilosec. Come back in 3 months if you don't feel better. And I was like, that's not good enough. And I had to go and advocate for myself and fight and fight and fight until someone would listen to me. And then they did. And this holistic practitioner down in New York was like, in 5 minutes, he was like, well, not only do you have, this gluten issue, but you also have a parasite that is making you also sick. So when you don't feel good, you're going, okay, I don't want to eat anything. So I'm just going to eat a cracker. I'm just going to eat a slice of toast. So you're poisoning your body. You're giving your body nothing but poison. And you're feeding these parasites because that gluten, that white bread is just turning into sugar. And so that's what they're eating. So I had to do like this really deep cleanse. I had to medicate myself. I had to do a lot of like crazy ass herbal supplements. And within 2 weeks, I was feeling better.
Yeah.
There's a caveat to that because in that same 2 weeks, my house burnt down. So the universe was like, hey, bitch, you got to recalibrate your entire life right now.
everything out the window.
Everything all at once. That's a whole nother story. But thank goodness for this person who listened, and again, now here I am in my 40s and I'm having very similar issues. But now I know where to go, who to talk to, how to advocate, what I can do for myself before going and doing, and having someone say, well, you're in your 40s and you're fat and you're a woman. And so you either are crazy or, oh, honey, you're just tired. Just take a break. What the fuck is wrong with you people?
Yeah.
The thing is that most of us don't have weight issues. We're not sick because of our weight issues. We have weight issues because we're sick.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm over here in this body that is obviously holding weight because it feels like it's going to die all the time. So, right? So my biology is saying, well, we got to store. We have to store fat and water and food because we might be starving to death at any moment. Everything's trying to kill us. Yeah. Right? That's what happens when you have an autoimmune disease. Your body thinks it's trying to kill itself all the time. So people either gain a lot of weight or lose a lot of weight. Right? Yeah. That has been my experience. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nutritionist.
But that's been my experience with people too. And yeah.
Right. And so.
And myself, and my own experience. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's really, really frustrating. And if anybody out there is dealing with these things, keep going, keep trying, keep advocating, and try your own shit too. Like, be drastic about your own health. Yeah. Be fierce about what's going on with your body, and say, okay, well, if no one is gonna help me, then I'm going to put myself on an elimination diet, and I'm going to not eat onions for a week and see how I feel. I'm going to not eat gluten for a week and see how I feel. But stick to it. Care for yourself the way you would care for somebody else, and don't give up.
Yeah. And there are people out there who will help. You just have to find them sometimes. But
for sure.
Yeah, so our practical advice for the podcast today is be your own advocate for your health around food, around everything. But I feel like this one, I feel like food and sensitivities and tolerances and allergies is really, they're just people who think it's made up in people's brains. And I'm like, that's not how brains work. It doesn't matter if it's just in your brain, if it affects everything.
Yeah. And that's the same thing with people that deal with invisible illnesses and invisible disabilities and autoimmune issues. And so many of those things can be tied back to our guts and our stomach health and the types of foods that we're eating. And I'm not saying change your diet and all of your health issues are going to get better.
No.
I'm not saying
that would be great if that worked.
It would be awesome. It would be spectacular. But I can tell you from my own personal experience, whenever I have to recalibrate, I do notice differences. And the food system, and going back to the beginning of this conversation, the food system, how we think about food, how we are connected or disconnected to food, how we are connected or disconnected to Mother Earth because of food, how we eat it, how we buy it, how it's processed, how it's grown, is a direct correlation to our gut health, which is a direct correlation to our overall physical bodies. So I'm not saying change your eating, change what you're eating, and that's going to fix all your problems. But it might help. It might be a 1% change or 1% help with this thing, with that thing, with, you know what I mean? So just try everything,
Yes.
Like we know facts that like sugar, too much sugar is bad for you. We know you shouldn't eat McDonald's every day. Like we know these things, right? So do the things you know how to do and learn new things and take care of yourself. You only got one you.
That's right. Awesome.
Sorry, you get me on a soapbox about this and I'm all in.
Oh, I'm an expert soapbox polisher. So it's all good.
It's because it's all connected.
Yeah,
how we
is.
feel about ourselves, how we feel about food, how our spirit is connected to Mother Earth. It's all the same.
Yeah.
It's all us and how we relate to others and how we live our lives. So it starts with you.
Yeah.
How you think about food. What are you doing? Your diet and can I just say this? Your diet isn't just what you eat. It's what you consume on media. It's who you hang out with, the books you read. It's the music you listen to, right? Fill yourself with good things intentionally. That's where witchcraft comes in. Intention.
Yep.
Right? That's it.
Oh,
and
but no, thank you so much. Thank you for coming on and for sharing your wisdom and just being a lovely person and all of those good things.
Thank you for having me. I'm sorry if I went a little buck wild.
No,
I'm a little over-caffeinated. So.
Yeah, I don't apologize for being over-caffeinated or passionate. No. So.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
WitchLit is a production of 1000 Volt Press and is edited by Julian Rashke. Our intro music is Cosmic Glow by Andrew Kay, and our outro music is Voices by Alexander Shanekar. Transcripts and all our previous episodes are available at witchlitpod.com, and you can follow us on Instagram or Threads at witchlitpod. Please help other witches find us by leaving a rating or review wherever you listen to podcasts. And thank you for listening to and reading WitchLit.